So, hi everybody. We thought today we'd talk a little bit about our own sort of journeys and adventures with NVC and kind of how we found that to be useful and important in our lives and in the kinds of work that we do. So, I thought I would start by asking you a couple of questions, Joe, because we've been working with NVC together for a little while now, but it's a little newer to you than it is to me. Um, and I'm curious to hear a little bit from you. How have you been sort of experimenting with NVC in your life, and how have you found it useful or maybe also challenging?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things I've been thinking about is I was actually like re-listening to some podcasts recently from Marshall Rosenberg, who I don't know if they invented NVC, and he said this phrase which was cutting to the heart of the needs. And so where I found this really helpful is so I get really bothered by people being annoyed, especially if I think they're annoyed by me. I find that quite devastating, even though I'm sure I'm annoying people all the time. But if I get a sense that someone looks a bit upset, angry, annoyed, um, and they might just be tired, but I assume it's about me and I should probably be doing something differently.
Mm.
So one of the ways I've really liked experimenting with NVC and this idea of cutting to the heart is is really thinking about what those needs are that for that person which is are unmet, and rather than looking at this almost like surface level mood stuff, and how they may or may not be feeling,
Mm.
but really trying to get beneath that. So if I think someone's annoyed at me, try and understand that what need is not being met right now for them. And I might say, I might say something out loud about it, or it might just help me have empathy with them.
So I think there's something really interesting in that, and maybe the distinction that I would point to is what I would call stimulus versus cause.
Mm,
So there, I think there's this really valuable idea in NVC that there's a kind of root cause um, to all of our strategies, to all of our behaviors, to all of the kind of affective, responses that we have to the world around us, which is rooted, as you say, in needs, in the things which are really important to us, which are universal, which we all care about, and so they provide a ground for us to connect with each other. But that's not always the way we think about it. So you talk about people being annoyed by me, or me feeling angry because of something somebody did. And I think that's very much the way that most of us are educated, is to confuse stimulus and cause in a sense. So, we may be stimulated by other people's behaviors, for instance, or by circumstances in the world around us. They may even sometimes, even you, Joe, may stimulate irritation in other people sometimes. Um, but even when you may create some stimulus for them, there's still underneath that a need which is unmet.
mhm.
Um, so that, and I think kind of teasing apart that distinction does a couple of interesting things. It helps us to build a basis of empathy, like you're talking about. So it helps us to see something that's universal. I might not find myself irritating in the same moments that you find me irritating, but even when my behavior stimulates some irritation in you, I can still identify with that underlying need, that underlying thing which is important to you. But also, I think it just opens up so many more options in terms of how we might respond to each other and respond to the world around us. So I think that is a really key sort of distinction. Where else have you found yourself kind of experimenting? Have you found yourself in some kind of sticky situations, maybe where NVC has um, been helpful, or where you've seen yourself doing things differently?
Yeah, I think that the self, like giving myself emergency empathy has been something that has helped me in some kind of, yeah, sticky situations where I I might my what I would have done before was to realize I wasn't feeling great. I might feel angry, upset, hurt, but continue with kind of try and just push that away and continue in the conversation, or whatever's going on. um Whereas when I take, it might just be a few seconds, it might even just be the acknowledgement that I need some empathy. I might not even have that much time to explore what needs aren't being met, or I might make a sort of guess at which of my needs aren't being met, and then later I can think about it a bit more. But it just helps in the moment, kind of just get back a bit to, I don't know, just make myself sort of a bit more aware and a bit more present as well.
Yeah.
And it might slow down the conversation a bit, and I might end up not talking for a bit longer, but it means I can then continue in the conversation, whereas before I might have sort of retracted, or like I said, like pushed it down.
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, I mean, I guess I've also found that to be a really transformative practice in NVC. When I first started studying NVC, um, about 15 years ago, I was working with children, and what I did for quite a while is I set a timer on my phone that would go off, I think every half an hour, every 15 minutes or something. Um, and I would just stop whatever I was doing, and do this kind of very quick kind of self-empathy check, like what's going on right now, how am I feeling, what needs are up for me. um, and the kind of environment I was working in with kids, that sort of worked. I was working with older kids, and it was a democratic school, so some of the kids were very interested and were doing similar sorts of experiments. um, but I found that really useful. But I must say, like, it's a lifelong journey in a way. Like, a lot of years later, I still find this really challenging and really helpful.
Mm,
So there's a kind of like practice of returning to the moment, and reconnecting with ourselves in the midst of the midst of the kind of maelstrom of of uh, of emotional life, which can help us to be more present, but also, kind of paradoxically, to exercise a little bit more detachment in a way on what we're doing. And I think when we do that, when we're able to bring ourselves into view, it also helps us to bring other people into view. Um, because I think otherwise we can just become so lost in the emotional experience that we start to kind of not be able to see the wood for the trees.
mm. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, which I've been thinking about quite a lot recently, which is it links to what we were talking about before about like stimulus and cause.
Mm.
And what I really like is, so I think a thing that we've all said like a lot of times is, you made me feel X. So you made me feel um, abandoned, or even just you made me feel sad. And so whether it's got that kind of not a feeling thing, which abandoned I'd kind of say, and through MVC is not a feeling, and hurt I think would say is a feeling, but still it's, or sad. But so one reason I like that is it helps us take responsibility. It helps me take responsibility for, again, that differentiation between what is the stimulus, and what is about your own thinking and how you've interpreted something.
Right.
And the other side of that is about power, and how you're giving some power away by saying that people made you feel a certain way, or made you do something. And I just really like thinking of it in those terms.
Mm.
So yeah, that's something I've been kind of experimenting with recently in different relationships, like noticing when I want to say you made me feel a certain way, and also if someone says that to me, what I want to do is say, oh, I didn't make you feel anything, but actually then trying to get to the needs, underneath it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's something really interesting about that, like how, yeah, like you say, when we kind of locate our emotional responses purely with somebody else, and it's a kind of giving up of our own responsibility, but there's also some kind of giving up of our own agency, our own capacity to participate and influence how we are in relation to other people. But at the same time, it's also a strong power gesture a lot of the time, because it's very related to a kind of story about blame, you know. Um, so I think that this is the kind of thing which I'm really interested in talking about in NVC, is how NVC doesn't exist in a kind of vacuum. How the way we communicate is always wrapped up with power, position, privilege, and how that shapes what our communication gestures might mean. Even things like offering empathy, I think can be interpreted and received in very different ways based on how we are in relation, the dynamic power dynamics that exist in relationships. So sometimes saying you make me feel frustrated might be a very, like, sort of, I'll judge it as a kind of pathetic kind of thing. And sometimes it might be a very overpowering thing to say to somebody. And I think that has a lot to do with this kind of constantly fluctuating power dynamics that exist in all of our relationships. So I think I'm really interested in discussing NVC in a way which isn't divorced from the politics of everyday life. Good. Well, thank you. I think that's a useful little taste of how some of the ways in which we're finding NVC useful, and I would love to hear from some of the people watching this video what they found interesting or useful, or also what you found challenging about using NVC in your real life, everyday life.
Yeah. And if you've got any questions or anything, we're happy to get into a conversation about it as well.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks.